Thank you for the declaration of statement. The presentation time is 15 minutes, including QA. Please give a huge round of applause welcoming our speaker, Shiva Bhusal.
Thank you again, I appreciate it. The title of this talk is The Sense of Style. I'd like to start this talk with a few questions that often come to our mind when we start writing a software program. Maybe we are curious to know, how would the program behave, what's the functionality that the program aims to achieve, and we are also curious to know what's the deadline, by when should we complete that specific program. And we'd also like to know what would be the performance of the program. Would the program scale to a large user base? And lastly, we'd also like to know whether the program is secure or not. There are many other questions that might come to our mind. There's one specific question on which this whole talk revolves around. I intentionally omitted that specific question in this slide. I'll get back to that question at the end of this talk. So what is programming? Donald Knuth says programming is the art of telling another human being what one wants the computer to do. So he emphasizes on the human aspect of programming as much as the computer aspect. So when we write a code, we are telling the computer, we're giving computer the instructions, but we are also telling another human being what we are telling the computer to do. So human aspect in programming is equally important as the computer aspect. And what comes to our mind when we hear the word aesthetics? Any guess? Maybe we associate it with art. Maybe we associate with beauty, or beauty that we perceive when we see art. Or it could be something, or it could actually be a general perception of things that's just not limited to sight. So this is a software engineering conference, and specifically this is a Python conference, and the talk is about coding aesthetics. So by coding aesthetics, I am trying to refer to these four aspects of code. So if all these aspects of code are present, then we could say that the code is aesthetically pleasing. If these aspects are, if one of the aspect is missing or all of them are missing, then we could say that yeah, the code is not aesthetically pleasing. And the GN of Python, some of the aphorisms in GN of Python, they are explicitly talking about aesthetics. I could list these 5 of them, which are more or less talking about aesthetics. And we often use this phrase a lot, the Pythonic way. It might even be cliched, but I personally really like it. And by Pythonic way, what we are trying to say is writing code in a simple, elegant, and concise manner. And I find programming and creative writing so much similar in the way we approach both the forms of art. In both the forms, we actually start with a rough draft, and then we see areas of improvement, and we iteratively make it better until the draft gets a standard that we aim to achieve. And just like writing, in programming also there are a few techniques that helps to improve our improve the aesthetics of the code, similar to writing. There are 3 techniques in general. So the first one is compliance to style guides. And in Python's case, it's pep8. And so pep stands for Python Enhancement Proposal. And pep8 documentation is explicitly the set of guidelines that was created to make code stylistically consistent. And pep8 itself is saying that while consistency is important in code, it's also equally important to be pragmatic. So if our project actually has a different set of guideline than PEP8, then our project's guideline takes higher precedence over PEP8. And if we're writing a module or a function where we're actually using different convention, then that specific convention would take a higher precedence over the project's convention. So yeah, in summary, PEP8 is all about, in summary, PEP8 focuses about consistency, but it also talks about pragmatism. And there are many static tools, static analysis tools available that help make our code stylistically consistent. These are 4 representative tools, and in this specific talk, we'll be discussing about 2 of them. The first one is PyLint. And this is a tool that helps to detect code smells, the areas of improvement in the code in terms of style. And this specific tool is based on PEP8 guidelines, and then it can be customized as well according to our project's need. And it can also be easily integrated with editors such as Visual Studio Code and PyCharm. And next, we'll run through a small example where we are using PyLint to improve the code's consistency in terms of style. So this is a simple factorial program. Here, what we are doing is we are getting a number as an argument, and then we are checking whether that number is valid or not. If the number is a valid number, then we're computing the factorial of that number. And we ran PyLint on it, and PyLint gave few suggestions for us. So there are many suggestions, but in summary, it's telling us to improve the convention of the function name. It's telling us to modify the if-else statement slightly. It's also telling us to improve the way we are checking n's value in line number 4. And it's also telling us to add comments in the form of docstrings in the code. And we took that suggestion, and then we modified the code to this specific version. This specific version is not necessarily concise, but it is adding some value in terms of aesthetics. It's making it more readable, and it's making it more maintainable. So it's achieving the 2 aspects of aesthetics. Similarly, there's another tool called Black. While PyLint gives us suggestions, and we would have to modify, we don't have to make changes ourselves. Black is a tool that actually does the thing for us. It's an automated tool, so it helps, in an automated way, it helps to fix the style issues in our code. And this is a version of code before and after. We might not notice a big difference in these 2 versions, but what Black is doing here is it's adding some line spaces so that in one of the PEP8, in one of the aphorisms in Gen 8 was sparse is always better than dense. So it's adding some sparsity to the existing code. And if you notice in line number 7, it's also adding a space in between 2 operands in the multiplication operator. And so this is the first technique, is using code refactoring. First technique was using static analysis tools. The second technique, how we could make code more aesthetically pleasing, is refactoring. So refactoring, when we refactor the code, what we are doing is we're changing the internal structure of the code to actually make it more maintainable and more to make it more readable and maintainable. And we could argue that using static code analysis tools and making some style changes, that's also a subset of refactoring. But refactoring is something that's not just limited to style, it covers other aspects as well. So refactoring is an iterative process. First, we want to ensure we have solid set of tests so that we don't break anything while we are refactoring the code. Second, we want to identify the areas of improvement in the code. And then third, we want to make some changes in it. And we'd want to repeat this process again until we reach to a version of code that we find is of high quality. And the third technique that we could use in any programming language to make the code aesthetically pleasing is using syntactic sugars. And syntactic sugars are the programming constructs that help us write concise and more aesthetically pleasing code. So the two techniques that we discussed earlier, they mostly touch maintainability, readability, and consistency aspect. They do not necessarily address the conciseness or brevity aspect of the code. Some of the syntactic sugar constructs, they help to address the conciseness or brevity in code. And for example, this one, first version is a verbose and lengthy way of list comprehension, while second version is a more elegant and concise way of doing the same thing. And second version, we could also say it's the Pythonic way. And similarly, F-string, first and second version, the second version is not necessarily concise, but it's more readable, it's more maintainable, and it definitely looks more elegant. And Python is a programming language that's extremely rich in syntactic sugars. Maybe we could explore these syntactic sugars and incorporate them in our project. That will help to make our code more aesthetically pleasing. And so we started this talk with a few questions at the beginning that often come to our mind when we start a software program. There was one specific question which we intentionally omitted, and that question is, maybe we could also ask, what will somebody else think of this code 6 months down the line? This is important because that somebody else could also be the original author of the code, because 6 months down the line, they are no longer the same person. They will be looking at the code in a different time, in a different context, and with different set of eyes. With that, I'd like to end this talk. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience.
Thank you, Shiva, for the amazing session. Any questions? If anyone has any question, please raise your hand.
Thank you very much for the talk. I'd like to ask that when we should use those tools such as PyLint or Black, given that somebody is a beginner or programmer, do you suggest to use those tools earlier stage of coding or like when most of the functions are completed?
Thank you so much for your question. So it could be up to individual preference, but I personally believe using these tools at the beginning stage of our career, that will always encourage us to write a more aesthetically pleasing code in the future. Because personally, in my programming journey also, when I started, I did not think about style in general. But looking back, I realized it would have been better if I had actually thought of that. And what is important is using tool or not, that might not be an important question, but understanding the motive behind using it, or understanding PEPET guideline, or what sort of standard that the general programmers are following, I would encourage that exploring even as a beginner programmer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva, for your amazing session. Any more questions? We have only few seconds remaining, so I think we need to conclude this session. Please give him huge round of applause to our speaker. And if you have any questions or concerns with the speaker, you can personally meet him outside the hallways or passages and discuss with him. Thank you, Shiva, for your amazing session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.